Welcome everyone to CBT Nugget series for designing and implementing your server infrastructure. Today's Nugget's going to be more implementing your server infrastructure as we do IPAM setup and configuration. Now I'm not going to do the whole role installation, but we're going to show you step by step some things you need to get in place in order for IPAM to begin to centrally manage your distributed DHCP, DNS, and domain controllers in your environment. So I didn't want to take a lot of time in the front of this nugget to show you how to install a role. I mean, you guys all know about this. We come up here, we click Manage, we add roles and features. And one of them that we can add is going to be our IPAM server role, okay? Now, I'm over here on my System Center, SC01. I can know that just by coming to my local server. You notice SC01 set up and ready to go. So when I come over here to my IPAM overview, you'll notice I'm connected to SC01.NuggetLab.com, and I need to have the appropriate privileges. So I've logged in as Laura Kay, who is an administrator in this domain, and also obviously as a domain admin is going to be able to do a lot of what we're asking our IPAM server to do with that appropriate authority, okay? Now we've connected to the IPAM server. Now the cool thing is this is local. This is on my local machine, SC01. You can, by the way, obviously connect to an IPAM server remotely utilizing Server Manager. We know how to do that. That's pretty obvious. And then now we need to provision the IPAM server. We're going to say, how are we going to enable our IPAM access? So I click on this, and we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard of Microsoft, and it says, before you begin, a couple of things to think about. We are going to get this centralized management, or obviously you can do distributed if you want, but it's primarily a centralized management of your DHCP, DNS, NPS, and even Active Directory domain controller. You can choose these servers to be managed or unmanaged, as we'll see in here a little bit later, and you can choose and optionally create an IPAM database, okay? Now they give you a warning here about using the GPO, the Group Policy Object Provisioning method, and it tells you if you start off with this, you can't go back to the manual method. And we'll again remind you the two different ways that you can do this in just a second. But it tells you that, hey, if you start manually, you can always jump over to the GPO based. Why? Because this is dealing with Active Directory, and of course, you know, it's always there, so you can go out and start utilizing it. Hopefully that made sense for you. So we're going to go ahead and click on Next. Now, a couple interesting things here. You can notice it says that IPAM can be configured to store data in a WID, or Windows Internal Database, or Microsoft SQL Server Database. This is clue one that I am operating in the environment of, yes, you've got it, SQL, or not SQL Server 2012, but Server 2012 R2, because remember before, if you did this in 2012, if you saw one of our previous versions of the 70-413 on this, you'll notice that, hey, I wasn't able to do this. This was not an option for me to choose. Now, of course, I could come in here and go, okay, I'm going to do SQL 01 and my database name of, and you can even call it the IPAM database. It'll use port 1433, create your new schema, and you're going to be ready to go. Or you can do what I always do, and especially in this small environment, I mean, obviously I'm not going to be creating massive scopes and huge amounts of computers and end users, so it's not a big deal for me. So I'm not going to have to do that. But one thing you can do is you can start this way. If you start small and then grow and grow and grow, notice what it says here. You can migrate from the Windows Internal Database to SQL. Why is that? Because I think I mentioned in the nugget on designing for IPAM that it's the same thing. It's Microsoft SQL. It's just SQL Express. It's a SQL database under the hood, and you're just merely going to move it on over to the big boys there on the SQL databases. Okay? So that's going to be the thing that we need to kind of think about there. Now we click on, I'm going to stick with just the Windows Internal Database, default, use default, and then click Next, which is what type of provisioning method are we going to use? This is where we were talking a little bit more about, you know, choose wisely, right? Here's the deal. If you use the manual provisioning method, notice what it says. It requires that you configure required network shares, security groups, firewall rules manually on each of those managed servers. Ouch. I don't know about you, but part of the reason why I like using some of these Microsoft products is because it does it for me automagically. as Brian Alderman is fond of saying. So when we look at this, what do we want to do? I would say, unless there is a security reason or there has to be done manually, and that's just based on my personal experience, you want to use group policy base. The reason why is because it literally creates group policy objects in those domains. And this is cool, with a lot of managed servers, the group policy objects will then auto-magically go out and create all the necessary settings that you need in that environment. Now, to do this, though, you are going to create the group policy objects, okay? And then you are going to invoke them right here with the invoke IPAM GPO provisioning. And I love this. Notice? They spelled it wrong. Okay, so anyway, I was like catching Microsoft in spelling errors because, hey, you know what? Even Microsoft Word has spell check on it, guys. I mean, come on. All right, so enough joking around about their misspells. So once you do this, notice I have to, before I can do this, I have to put the prefix here. The prefix is unique for each IPAM server in, all right, gang, Active Directory Forest. So if I've got 2 domains in the forest, and I think, well, I'll just call them IPAM, and that will be the GPO prefixes that are going to be created for the DHCP, for the DNS, and for my domain controllers or my network policy servers. Problem: if you've got 2 domains and they need to be unique, that's going to be a problem. So you are going to need something that will be unique for each IPAM server in the Active Directory Forest. So just kind of consider that. Don't try to do the IPAM 1, IPAM 2. So I'm just going to put this and call them IPAM. Okay, I obviously only have 1 domain in the forest, and this should work just fine. And it's going to remind you here, by the way, we click next and we have our little summary saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. Notice it's going to create these group policy objects, IPAM DHCP for DHCP servers, okay? So it's going to say this is what we're going to use. That's why I need to remember, and by the way, if I forget, just come back over here, or if I need to change it, click previous. I need to remember this name prefix when I use the IPAM GPO provisioning commandlet. If I don't remember this, it's going to be hard for me to create those group policy objects throughout my environment. So we do that. It says it's going to point to these. It's going to create the database on the WID, configure access, create scheduled tasks for IPAM to collect the data. That's okay. You can also do stuff manually, create the local security groups, and enable IP address tracking capability. Okay? So we go ahead and we click apply. It's off to the races. We'll let this go ahead and cook for a little bit, pause, and see you back after it's finished. And so here we go. The IPAM provisioning completed successfully. It tells you everything that we already talked about that it's done. Now it says create the GPOs using the invoke IPAM GPO provisioning. Again, spelling it wrong. I don't know what it is wrong with these guys. Unless that's actually the command. I'll find out here in just a second. Actually, I know that's not exactly how we do it. So we've provisioned the IPAM server. We need to get ready for server discovery. And the way that we do that is we come up over here and we type in get, or I'm sorry, I'm so used to the get command. Invoke IPAM GPO provisioning, and then I have to set domain, in this case Nugget Lab, and GPO prefix name. Remember, I needed to remember that name. In this case, IPAM. And then we'll say force, which will then make it go. So if I've done this right, looks like it is, creating the GPOs, yay, everything, importing the GPOs. I love it when a plan comes together. And then linking those GPOs, creating the access control lists, ACLs, and voila. I should have done that verbose so you could have seen all the things that were going on there behind the scenes. I always forget to do that, but that's okay. So now we come down over here, and it says, you know, we've done this. Now we click on Configure Server Discovery, okay? And remember, it says to make sure that you created the GPOs for the domain using the invoke IPAM GPO provisioning. Already done that. What domain do we want to discover? Notice there's only one. I only have one domain, so let's go ahead and click Add. You can do this for domain controllers, DHCP servers, DNS servers, and if I had NPS running in my environment, that would also be a selection that I would go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and we click on OK. Notice it would have done this automatically by utilizing the appropriate scheduled server discovery task. So we'll go ahead and say we're going to do this automatically. Configure this. We go ahead and we click on Start Discovery, and it should warn me, hey, we're already running like that, waiting for their server task to run and be completed right there. You can notice up here we already did the installation. We were talking about that feature set, and right now it's doing the server discovery task. So we're going to go ahead and pause and wait for it to finish, and then we can go ahead and utilize this in our environment. By the way, while that's cooking, I jumped on over here to my domain controller where I'm running my group policy, and you'll notice under my group policy management, under group policy objects, I've got my IPAM DC NPS, IPAM DHCP, and IPAM DNS, and they are linked, notice, at the Nugget Lab, because I added that domain for the server discovery, and this is where they're all linked at the domain level. All right, let's jump on back and see what we've cooked up over here on my IPAM server. Okay, so we're back on over here on SC01. Notice that's right here. Okay, so we're set up and ready to go. Notice that discovered servers are based on 12/8/2014 at this time. What they had scheduled, if we had looked at it down here below, let me scroll down here, and you'll notice that you have server discovery is set for the next day. Right now, you got address utilization ready, we've got server configuration ready, and all these kind of things ready, but the server discovery was going to be the next day, and so that was actually run here. So we can come up here and notice it says, all right, this is based on this. We're all good to go, right? Well, here's the deal. If I go to my server inventory, I'm going to get an interesting little message. And notice the little thing. It says that it's a blocked IPAM access. Well, why is that? Because it says it's unblocked here. I mean, it's got the server name, and if I scroll down here, it even gives me your information, DC01 Nugget Lab. Here's my IP4 server status and everything. It's unblocked, and then you see that it says that you should block IPAM access. That's what you should do. What are you talking about? Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. It is unmanaged. You need to choose which server that you are going to do for that. So the way that we can do that is we can right click on this, we can edit server, and here we go. Manageability status is unmanaged. So I come over here, I select unmanaged, I click on OK, and bada bing, bada boom. Look at that. And I know I promise not to say that phrase as much. People are giving me a hard time. Chris, quit saying that. It's just like, it's like crazy. Okay, so here we go. IPAM access unblocked and managed. I get the green checkbox. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, Chris. This is only for IP version 4. Well, that's right, because we're talking about our server scope here for DHCP. Here's the DC01 is the name of it, right? And we can see that. But if you're like, oh, wait a minute, what about DNS and DHCP servers? You know, what do we have for that? So if I click on it, notice it says, sure enough, here we go, DC01 DNS. Okay, good. And DHCP, yes, running on there. And I can come down here, and of course it gives you the server properties. I click on the DNS zones here, and we can, check out. Now I haven't gathered any data yet, so it's not going to populate down here yet, but you can go ahead and do that. Now let's go back to our overview page here. Simply do that. And so we've started, we've selected or added servers to manage and verify IPAM access. Now we select on retrieve data from managed servers. And by the way, these tasks that are all here are all ones that you can do down on obviously the individual servers and down here in some of your other tabs. It's just this is the overview, and sometimes when you're starting off, you're going to connect, you're going to provision, you're going to configure, then you're going to start it, then you select or add servers to manage, and then verify the IPAM access. This is also where I could have selected. Remember, I was like, oh, I need to change the manageability of this, and I could have selected on this, and it would have brought up that little window for me as well for the particular servers. And then now, of course, I'm retrieving the data from the managed servers. Notice up here, these are the tasks that are running. So we'll pause for just a second. Sometimes it takes a little while, and we'll check out what we have on the other side. And voila, it is done now, and we now have that information in place. So again, now if I come down to, remember we were doing the monitor and manage here, if I click on DNS and DHCP servers, we can see that, yep, these are still up and running. Now remember, I clicked down here on my zone monitoring, right? So I selected on this and I said, oh, there was no data. Oh, here we go. Here we go. We got our no data right now because it's unknown for, but notice it now has the information, MSDCS Nugget Lab and nuggetlab.com. And when I come down here, I can even pick up my authoritative servers. Now notice it doesn't have any, the zone status data is not here. And I haven't really set this up completely, but you can do forward lookup, you can do any reverse lookup. Notice as soon as I select this, if I select on the DHCP scopes, I actually have a scope in place, 172.16 that I've set up. We remember that. And if I come on down here, it's going to tell me not only my scope properties, any options, any effective policies. Now check this out, right, by the way. IP address blocks. Here we go. Here, and it shows the utilization. Right now, we're doing good. There's no overlapping. Here's the network start and end. It is a global scope. It is not virtualized. I'm going to show you that here in just a second. Managed by Microsoft DHCP. Here's the service instance, and it's a dynamic assignment type. Percentage utilized 42.86, 21 assigned addresses, 9 utilized addresses, which is cool. So I can now start gathering this data and show things like utilization trends on certain days. You can select the date here. We'll go ahead and we'll just do today and today. All right, so we'll go ahead and apply that. Actually, is today the 8th? What is today? So we can do a 1 day, you can do a 7 day, or anything like that. I don't think I've got this set, for that, because you have to do at least 1 day, and I haven't really done any stuff like that. You can do an event catalog here, which will give you any event ideas of things. But notice here the virtualized IP address space. Ding, 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 small wallet room. Another thing that you do not have in 2012, but is now utilized in, you got it, in 2012 R2. This would then be set up for your Hyper-V machines to then be able to handle or hand out IP address ranges within their environment, in a virtualized environment. So some really cool things. This is pretty much the extent of what we need to show you for your design standpoint, how to get it up and running and actually make sure that you're utilizing some of these things like your when you are monitoring your DHCP scopes, your DNS servers. And by the way, whenever you select these high-end tabs, they tell you and they give you background information like what it is that you need. DHCP scope properties, DNS server properties, DHCP scopes, DNS zone monitoring, and it tells you exactly what is going on when you select these particular tabs, which is good to use when you're designing and developing your server infrastructure. Well, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for joining me.